this. I told you this is going to be, I know. Okay, and I'm using my phone for the presentation. Just like slides. All right. So my name is Trey Ecker, and I'm going to give a speech on the rice treatment. So before I begin, I'd like to explain, I'd like to ask you a couple questions. So how many of you ever sprained your ankle or knee or anything like this? Okay. So if you've done this, did you know what to do in the recovery process? No? All right, well you're in luck, because if you haven't sprained your knee, I'm going to teach you what to do if you do, and if you have, I'm going to teach you what you should have done when you did it. So we're going to go over the RICE treatment. This stands for Rest, Ice, Compress, and Elevate. And the treatment was created by Dr. Gabe Merkin in the late 1970s in a book he published. He coined the term and popularized the treatment. So yeah, so we're going to get into a couple things today. We're going to talk about the types of injuries that require the RICE treatment, how to execute the RICE treatment, and also why you should use the RICE treatment. So first off, I want to give some background on the treatment. Like I said before, it was popularized by Gabe Merkin. He's a sports medicine doctor, and he made the term. Since then, there's been multiple doctors, many doctors. It's a widespread treatment for injuries such as sprains, contusions, strains, dislocations, and sometimes minor fractures. Depending on the severity, you can use this treatment to recover from that. And it'll just help with the recovery process, and it'll also help in measuring pain, not measuring pain, but dealing with the pain, and get this swelling to go down and such like that. So, as you can see here, there's an example of an ankle sprain and a knee sprain. So we're going to move on. We've covered what types of injuries to use, or what types of injuries require the RICE treatment. And now we're going to get into why we use the RICE treatment. So first off, there's a couple of reasons why. For resting, the reason you do this is because you want to not further the injury. So if you're going to rest your injury, because if you're using it, obviously it's weaker and you could further damage it, and this is not going to be good in the long run. Secondly, you're going to have the ice step, and this helps to reduce swelling and pain, and this is really crucial in the moments after you injure yourself, because the sooner you get the ice on it, the better you're going to be able to respond, and it'll just really minimize that pain. And from experience, you're going to want to do this. So compression is the next thing. This is really important because it's used to reduce swelling, and it's just kind of goes into play with rest. You put a brace on, such as like an ankle boot or a walking boot, if you like hurt yourself. So this will help rest. It'll take some of the weight off, and it also adds compression that'll reduce swelling. And then finally, elevation. This goes into rest as well. A lot of things play into the rest factor. Don't know if you've noticed, but so the elevation part is just when you're laying in bed, put a pillow underneath while you're icing it, or just laying there watching TV. It'll help just take some of that swelling away, and it also just lets you relax, which is nice when you're injured because you'll be very bored and probably want to binge watch a couple shows. So now that we've covered why we use the RICE factor, I'm going to just talk about really quick. There's some recent discoveries that have brought into some skepticism on the effectiveness of this treatment. So in 2012, there was a study published in the Journal of Athletic Training, and it said that there's only moderate evidence that rest helps recover injuries, and for ice and compression, those factors of the treatment, there's limited evidence on whether this helps or not. But speaking from experience, I can say that in my cases it has helped, and this is still widely used by many doctors as a treatment for types of injuries such as sprains and such. So next you're going to want to talk about, now that we've covered why you use the RICE treatment, we're going to talk about how to properly do this, okay? So first off, if we're resting the injury, things to do according to the medical, an article in Medical News Today. What you're going to do is you want to rest the injury because this avoids using it more, and it also helps prevent from further injuring it, as I said previously. Next, you're going to want to ice it. So they say you should ice it for 20 minutes, 4 to 8 times a day. And this is helpful because it just, as I said before, it reduces pain, takes away the swelling. And you're going to want to do this. Also, another thing to note, when you're icing, don't apply the ice directly to your skin. You're going to want to wrap it in cloth beforehand or a paper towel, something like that, and then apply it to the skin. Next, you're going to have the compression. Like I said, This is like ace bandages, ankle braces, walking boots, stuff like that. So with compression, it just reduces swelling. And make sure when you're doing this, don't apply it too tight because you don't want to cut off the circulation, but apply it tight enough that it applies pressure and reduces the swelling. And then finally, elevation. The study that I mentioned prior, the one published in 2012, they said that there is pretty much no evidence supporting whether if elevation helps or not. But if you're laying in bed, it doesn't hurt to do this, so it's still recommended by many doctors. Alright, so now that we've gone over the rice treatment, let's just go over the steps of what we talked about today. We talked about the types of injuries that require this treatment, we talked about why we use this treatment, and we finally talked about how to properly use the treatment. So now that you have this knowledge, you can go out there and embrace your inner daredevil and be as clumsy as I am, and get these injuries without being worried about recovery. So now that the speech is over, is there any questions? Yes.
How long should you go in between icing?
So they say they recommend doing like 10 minute to 20 minute periods and then taking about double that time of break in between. So if you did the 10 minute period, take a 20 minute break and then ice it, but only do this for a couple times. You don't want to do it like the entire day because this is, there was actually a study Dr. Merkin found that said the icing can reduces this hormone called IGF-1, which is like beneficial in healing, and it also can delay the healing process. So make sure you're not doing it too much, but still do it because it helps to reduce some of the swelling. Any other questions? Yes.
How long should it take for you to be like healed completely?
It depends on the severity of the injury. So, for example, currently I have a rolled ankle. I did this the other day. That'll take probably a week or two because it wasn't that bad. However, if you sprain your knee or if you dislocate something, it can take longer. And depending on the severity of the sprain, it obviously is going to vary. Any other questions? Nope. All right. Thank you for being a great audience. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Killed it.
One